Welcome to This Week from the Principal's Desk, a podcast about Lutheran schools and their leadership. This podcast is hosted by two Lutheran school leaders. My name is Rob Lunak, and I'm the superintendent of Lutheran neighborhood schools in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And my name is Mike Sheeman. I'm principal at Bethany Lutheran School in Parma, Ohio. Today, Rob and I are going to talk a little bit about a partnership or a relationship that's important for any school to have. We think about our partnership with our parents and, of course, the students being the reason that we're there, the center of all that we do. But we're going to talk a little bit about one that goes outside of your building itself. And we're going to talk about a school's relationship with emergency services. Probably as I say that, you're thinking about specific situations you've had in your school. I bet we could all think of a time when we've had to enlist the help of emergency services, be it a 911 call or an ambulance for somebody that's happened at your school. Heaven forbid, a fire truck if there's any kind of emergency there. But we thought we would talk a little bit about some of our thoughts around involving emergency services, but how not only can we use their services, but we can also be thankful for the gift that they are that God has given to us to support us as we fulfill our calling. The number one important point that I think we want to share is that the relationship that you have with your emergency service personnel in your community, it's a pretty vital one, and you want that to be a good relationship. So let's talk, Robert. What do you think? A little bit about how we can make that happen and the importance of that relationship and what we can do to foster that.
Yeah, it's really important, as Mike said, and some of that is just getting to know these people. So there is a police officer assigned to your building, whether you know it or not. And so you got to call and figure out who that is. They'll give you their cell phone number. They'll visit your school. You definitely want that person to know where you are, to know who you are, and so you can know them. So that's number one. You got to call these places and let them know that you know they're there, not just when you need them, right? Yes, we know they're there when we need them, but we want a tighter relationship than that. So we would always call all of them. One of my summer duties was I would call fire department, I would call the police station, I would call the local hospital, whatever was closest, and just say, hey, we're here. Do we have any meetings that we can meet? Like, can I take you guys out to lunch? Can you come see my building? I just want to get my name out there so you guys know who I am. And then I would ask clarifying questions. Has anything changed this year that you guys would like schools to do? Are there any other reporting requirements that you want me to be aware of? Or have you guys changed something where you're now saying, hey, we want to visit all the schools more often? What does that look like? In the public schools, a lot of the big public schools will have a resource officer assigned to them who just reports there, just works there. You're not going to have that benefit usually as a Lutheran school. Some big ones have their own resource officers now, right? But especially some of our smaller ones and especially our elementaries, it's not really a thing. But you still want to have that connection with those people to know who they are. I would always invite them like, hey, if you're looking for a place to do paperwork, you can always park in our parking lot and do paperwork. Cool. I'll bring you out a coffee. Let me know when you're here, right? And just trying to get that so they're more comfortable in your building. And then you want to expand that relationship in other ways. You want to maybe invite them out to do demonstrations or do assemblies or Mike, I'm gonna let you talk about this one because you put it in, but like bringing a dog around. Have you guys had a dog out there, Mike?
We have. We actually are blessed that one of our staff members is married to an officer who has a dog. And so we've had the dog out here. The kids love seeing Dexter is the dog's name, who comes out and they like to pet the dog, but there's been some fun demonstrations as well. The police officers really want to make sure that the kids are comfortable around them. And I think this is a neat way for them to connect with the kids. Because I don't know, I remember when I was a kid, and you would see any kind of uniformed person in your school, my first instinct was always, what's wrong? And then, oh my goodness, I'm scared of these people, right? And I think that is a natural instinct for kids to think both of those thoughts. Just the other day, in fact, I was walking around Bethany with two uniformed police officers. And they were there for nothing that was bad at all. It was just kind of a check-in point, and I was walking around the school. But oh my goodness, the scuttlebutt went crazy. There's cops in the school. There's cops in the school. It's like, yeah, that's cool. We welcome them here. We're excited about that. And so I was able to take them into some classrooms and just be like, hey guys, this is Officer Smith and Officer Jones, and they're just here kind of walking around the school saying hi to everybody. So do you guys have any questions for the police? And wanted to make an atmosphere where it was comfortable because I don't want kids to be scared of any kind of emergency services personnel. And so having them there on a regular basis is not a bad thing at all. In fact, it's something that I would encourage. And there's so many ways that you can make that happen. We've had officers, in fact, I had a police officer come in and speak with one of our sports teams at one point, just to give them a little bit of background on some integrity pieces of how to live life, right? They can come in and present on that. They can come in and work with your staff on any of your emergency procedures. They can actually be around when you do drills to be checking in on your emergency procedures. Um, but the visibility with kids, the more often that they're in the school, the less panic will be incited when they're present, if that makes sense. I really feel that kids just need to know these are some of our community helpers. And of course, I mean, in the younger grades, when they're doing social studies, kindergarten, first grade, who's in our community? Well, let's bring some of these people in because they're here and they're here as helpers for you guys. Rob, have you had experiences like that, bringing them in, or what kinds of things have you done in the schools you've served?
Yeah, so in Wisconsin here, police have to tour your building once a year. It's a law. And so we invite them in for that, but then we have the fire department come and present to our 4K kids. We've had paramedics come in and do CPR training. One of the things that we all need to keep in mind, especially in today's day and age, is that school violence can kind of happen anywhere. It can. And the police are the ones who are going to respond to that. And so I want them to know our building. And so one of the things that they actually did at one of the schools right before I got there, it was like the summer before I got there, they had the police do a training, like simulation, basically in the school building. And they had staff there and they're like, here's, what gunshots sound like. And here is what would happen. Here's how we would respond to something like this if it were to happen. And the teachers were a part of that. So they saw that. If you have any kind of Alice training or run, hide, fight training or Shepherd, I think there's one called Shepherd. If you have any type of school violence response training that you do, I would encourage you to have police be a part of that, whether they come in and present or whether they just come in and answer questions for teachers, because it means one thing coming from you as the principal. It means something entirely different coming from the emergency personnel who will be responding to it. And I think that is nice for teachers to see that, okay, this is not just a checkbox on a form for our principal. This is something we take seriously. And so we do invite these people and we do maintain a connection there. And we are a part of that because at the end of the day, your school plan should be on file with your police department, probably, right? I think most states probably have that law in the books now where you have to have it on file with your local police department so they know what your plan is. But also you want them there in your building so you have an idea of what their plan is, because their plan and your plan are not going to be the same plan. The way they respond is going to be the way they respond, and you definitely want to know what that is. The only way you know that is if you actually invite them out to show you what that is.
Mm-hmm. And Rob, you make a good point when you said you had a legal requirement to have them walk the building once a year. Every state has different legal requirements, but that is one thing that you're going to have to know as an administrator is what legally do you have to do? But what you have to do legally is one thing. I think, like you're saying, Rob, too, it's a common sense thing, right? Like you may not have to do certain things legally, but does it make sense that you're going to review these procedures or have process for different things? Know what those things are, and know that every school, every situation is unique. So the last school that I served, we had 7 buildings spread out on a 12-acre campus. Well, if I'm going to call a lockdown, if I can communicate where that is going to happen, well, then my process in the building where it's not even close to happening is that the kids could actually evacuate and go over here. I mean, that sounds crazy, but it works. So we ran some of those scenarios with our emergency services personnel. And while it wasn't legally we weren't legally obligated to do that, it made sense. And then they were able to say, yeah, that's a good plan. That's what we think you should do as well. So yeah, make sure that you know those things. In some states, it is here in Ohio, we also are legally obligated to report our emergency drills, and we have to submit those. So know those procedures, know legally what you have to do when it comes to your emergency services. I do love the ideas and the thoughts that so many of our staff have on how can we partner with or get to know our emergency services. A lot of things, like you said, Rob, give them a tour. We talked about demonstrations. We've done it before where, we're going to have the class make cookies for the fire department, and then we're going to couple that with a field trip. We're going to go to the fire department, have a little tour, talk to the firefighters, and then bring them cookies and thank them for their service. It's important that the kids know these people are putting their life on the line on a daily basis to keep us safe. And so we need to thank them. We need to support them. And we have a lot of teachers here at this school that are related to some sort of emergency service personnel. And when the teachers who are not think of ways to do that, everybody feels pretty good about it. I mean, it's not just a PR stunt. There needs to be authenticity in it. Of course, there's PR, and that's good marketing and good photos for your Facebook page or website or whatever. But that's never the driving purpose. The driving purpose is thanksgiving for the servants that God has given to protect us.
Yeah, and the people in these fields, they honestly have a heart for people. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in these fields. And they love interacting with your kids. It's got to be the bright spot in an otherwise kind of dreary day a lot of the time because they're dealing with so much that's going wrong. We had the fire department come out, do a whole building demonstration for us, observe a fire drill. And they brought like little fire hats for every kid, all 200 of them. And they're like, hey, here's fire hats. We're going to take them through the truck. Every kid gets to go through the truck and see it. And halfway through, they're like, we got to go. We got to call. And so they leave. And I'm like, hey, sorry, guys, this happens. It's emergency services. I know some of you guys didn't get to see the truck. That's how it goes, right? They're doing their job. They called me later and they're like, we can come back. We're done now. The fire's out. Do you want us to come back? We got some time. We can show the rest of the kids the truck. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. They just love to serve. And that's why they're doing what they're doing. So if you can recognize that, send them a Christmas card, send them something for Easter, invite them out to your things. I've seen some places actually say, we're going to, during like fire safety week, we're going to recognize the fire department. And so the fire department would come out and do a drill, and then they'd have like a gift for them and we'd recognize them and thank them. That's something that's nice to do. There's, I think, police officer appreciation weeks in January. You could do the same thing then. And then, especially for your older kids, whether it's your middle schooler kids or your high schoolers, these are viable career options for them. And so hook them up that way. Hey, we have some kids who are really interested in maybe being police officers later. Could you talk to them? We have some kids that would really love to be firefighters. Can you talk to them? We have some kids that really want to know what it's like to be a paramedic. Do you think you can give a demonstration to them? Some of these places will even go so far as saying, we'll shadow with a couple of them. Sure. Send a couple of them out. They'll do a ride along, or they'll get to hang out in the firehouse with us for a while. And that's just great missional work that you're doing. You get to connect with those people, but then also it's opening those educational horizons for your kids. You're putting career paths in front of them that maybe they didn't think about. And especially when you show the fire truck to the little kids, every kid wants to be a firefighter for at least a day after that. Like every kid wants to be a firefighter. They get to see all the cool gear. They get to ride in the big red truck. Every 4-year-old's like, I'm going to be a firefighter for sure.
They sure are. Yeah, that's hilarious. There's some other tangible things here too, Rob, that we could talk briefly about. I'll give one experience that I had. We at my last school, we had a really good relationship with the fire department, and every year we did the school auction, and what we would give them a call, and what they would auction is they would donate to us a pickup. They would go pick up a student at their house in the morning and drive them to school in the fire truck, and then when they got to school, the whole class got to come out and get a tour of the fire truck. And this kid was like fire captain for a while. And I mean, it was absolutely adorable. And everybody wanted that particular one. We also seen one school I was at had a actual program of a fire captain for the day. And it was always with the kindergartner kids. And you got to pick one kindergartner, and they would come out, and then this kindergarten would have to get to wear the hat, and they'd actually have a medal they would give the kid. And it was pretty cool. So we got to pick what kid that was, and we had different ways that we would try to do that. But thankfully, being kindergarten, the kids weren't there the year before, so they didn't know this was coming up. They didn't know that we were picking a kid, but it was cool. So they're very much willing to be there and to help you. Like you said, I like the way you phrased it. You're like a bright spot in their day when they get to see the kids. Rob, did you want to talk about the sporting event thing you mentioned earlier? Because I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. So if you are at a school where sports are a big deal, you should invest in giving out some passes to some community members. Like, here's a pass, you can use it for any sporting event. And so we handed out some passes and gave gave a couple to the fire department, a couple to the police department. Only had one person like take advantage of it, right? But that person came to a basketball game and then enrolled their kid. I'm like, great. It was awesome. He's like, yeah, it's just I didn't even think about it, and then I realized where you guys were, and I came, and it's such a nice environment, and I think my kid really like this, so we're gonna sign up. And that's something that you don't get if you don't kind of take that risk. And what do sports passes cost you? Almost nothing, right? Print them out on a nice card and give them out to some people. And that's one of those things that just finding unique and new ways to involve your community members because you want them to be a part of your Lutheran school. And so often I hear from Lutheran schools that you're the best kept secret in town. And I always wonder, why are you a secret? And if it's because you're not telling anybody about you, then that's maybe not the secret you want to be keeping. So, do those things. Talk to the police department, talk to the fire department, send them cards. And this works with any community organization, right? If there's some group doing good work in your community, you want them to know who you are, and you want to know who they are. And a lot of the time here in Milwaukee, there's a place called the Next Door Foundation, and they will allow teachers once a month to go and take as many books as they want for their classroom library. And this is a place that like we didn't even know existed. And then we found out about it and we're like, oh, why are we not taking advantage of this as classroom teachers? Go out and get some books. And then they were so tickled by it. They're like, can we take your guys' picture for the Facebook page? We think it's so great that you guys have sent so many teachers to do this thing. And it's one of those. The same is true with your fire department, your police department, your paramedics. They like being recognized. They like being a part of that. They're not working because they want to be recognized. That's not it, right? But it always is nice when somebody tells you thank you. I mean, think of your work as a principal. If somebody goes out of their way to say thank you to you, you remember that. Even though you're just doing your job, it's the same way for them.
Yeah, exactly. So let's transition this for a second to then the actual emergencies. So if you're an administrator for any length of time, I can almost guarantee you are going to have that 911 call where you need lights and sirens to your site. Maybe for whatever reason, if it's police, fire, or EMTs, whatever, you're going to need emergency services on your site. Usually when those things happen, there's a sense of panic that goes through not just the teachers, but especially the kids of, oh my goodness, we're on lockdown, or something's happening and I don't know what. Am I safe? All these things. But if you've already invested in the relationship with your emergency services and they've become an active part of the fabric and culture of your school, when the kids see them walking around doing their job, it's actually going to lower the panic level. And I'm not going to say eliminate because the adrenaline flows, but it will certainly give the kids a little bit more reassurance that, hey, we're used to seeing these people here and we know they're here to help us. Especially if, heaven forbid, you'd have to have police in your building for some reason to manage a situation and the kids see them in action. You really don't want to have the kids living in fear of the work that they have to do. So your work with emergency services personnel is an investment in the safety of the school overall as a whole, and I would strongly encourage that. In fact, I'm going to do a shout out here. We had a principal come down, former Lutheran school principal who now works with Lion Safety Consulting. His name is Julian Petzold, and he's up in Michigan. He actually came in and did some emergency training with our staff, and it was tremendous. He gave us some fantastic ideas, tangible ways that we could work with our emergency services personnel. Julian has presented at various LEA conferences. He usually has a booth in the exhibit hall. So I'd encourage you, if you're looking for a resource, I would give you his name with my highest recommendation. He did a tremendous job.
Yeah, other little things. There's emergency response stuff that we could talk about, but I feel that's probably a different podcast. How to respond in an emergency and after. That's probably a different one. But things you can have your police department do: car seat demonstrations, especially if you have a daycare or preschool. That's a really easy one. They'll come out and say, here's how you put a car seat in. And if you have anybody who doesn't have one, there's always car seat drives and things like that. Traffic studies, kind of quote unquote unofficial traffic studies. Hey, can you come through our pickup line and just tell me what you think about it? Are we blocking traffic? Is there anything that gets in the way? If you guys were to respond to something, I want to know. And then if you have cameras that are exterior cameras in your building. Let your police department know, hey, we have these cameras, just letting you guys know, because sometimes they'll come and they'll ask, hey, can we see your camera? We had something happen at this time. Can we take a look at that? And that's just building up that connection. You want to be a resource for them if you can. And there are cameras nearly everywhere nowadays, it seems. And usually schools, we have nicer ones. That's generally how it goes. We try because we need them. And so the police department does appreciate that. And there have been times they come in and they ask, I need this footage from this time. Cool. Happy to provide it. Right. Those things are all really helpful. There are some other things with a little more teeth. Like we had problems with parents turning one way out of a parking lot when they shouldn't have. And so we like asked a police officer to park outside, and you'd be amazed how many of them turned the right way that day. When it wasn't even illegal to turn the other way. They were just like, I shouldn't. And that was fine. That worked for me. And then they were there during our dismissal, and they got to see what we do.
Well, I think Rob, this certainly gives a good overview of just some general thoughts regarding emergency services personnel, and I hope this is allowing people to think through what is your relationship, and maybe you've heard a couple ideas or some easy things that you can implement, but I would encourage you to do that. Pick something, or if you are already doing something that you think is fantastic, please share that with me and Rob. I do believe that, like you said, Rob, there's another podcast on the horizon that covers a little bit more in the broader topic of just school emergencies. But for now, I think why don't we close off by going to the Lord in prayer and lifting this up to Him. Heavenly Father, we thank you for all of the blessings that you give to us each and every day. And we thank you especially for the blessing of those who serve in our community, for those who keep us safe. God, we know that people put their life on the line so that we can be safe, that we can be protected. And we know ultimately that Jesus put his life on the line and even died our death so that our protection would go all the way through till we're at your side for eternity. Especially now, we continue to thank you for the gift of Jesus' resurrection, which defeated sin, death, and the devil for us. And we thank you that we have the opportunity to share that with our community, and especially with our emergency services personnel and those who gladly serve each and every day. I pray that you'd be with all the schools as those relationships are developed and fostered and nurtured, that you would give us wisdom to know how to best do that so that our students know why they're here, why the emergency services personnel are there to support and to help us out. Bless all who serve in this area in all the communities in which they serve. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of From the Principal's Desk. If you found it helpful, please share it with someone else that can help. If you found it entertaining, please leave a rating or a review. And if you want to hear more episodes like this, subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a good week.